welcome back to Become Elite Academy. We are here with a little bit something different. We're here now with Daniel Smith. He's been coaching up here in the US for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And we're just interested in, getting to know a little bit about him, and then we'll be discussing coaching philosophies, trends, development stages, that sort of stuff. Just one-on-one, sorry, how to be a coach, what being a coach is really about. So Daniel, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I guess my journey into football started a little bit later than normal. I'd say maybe around like 13, 14 is where I really developed a love for the sport. And then due to injury, and then of course working with you, I just decided to pursue a journey in coaching. So far, my experience has been working with you during like personal sessions, during like COVID, and helping you a little bit with your sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I work with Jake's Soccer School, which is they're mainly focused in Long Island, New York, and they work with like kids between the ages of like kindergarten to all the way up to high school. And then hopefully next year I will be starting with Red Bull come February, March.
New York Red Bulls.
Yes, sir.
Big opportunity, man.
Yeah.
So Daniel has his USD license. I just finished mine, and he is now starting
My C. I start my C on the 6th of January. So hopefully by April, I will be a qualified C license coach as well.
And I apologize for the background music. We're filming in a gym, and there's a spin class going on right here.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't detract from the experience. Oh look, as if by magic.
Yeah.
So Daniel, I did a video recently where I talked about coaching philosophy. It'll be out by the time this is out.
Yeah.
And I spoke about the essential questions you have to ask yourself when you're making a coaching philosophy. So tell us a bit about your coaching philosophy, how you came up with it.
Well, basically, my idea of a philosophy is like how I want my teams to play and what I want to see from my players. So I'm a big believer of being in love with the ball, having the ball, and then, of course, having fun primarily, just mainly just from working with kids for the most part. But I also try to instill a belief of winning from a young age because, I find that when players have a bigger determination and drive to win, that would just translate automatically on the pitch in terms of just desire
Being competitive,
and being more competitive,
high
and,
intensity.
Yeah, and being more competitive. And high intensity.
What type of coach did you want to be, or do you look at yourself as being?
Well, I try to say I'm proactive in terms of what I want to see from my players, and I tend to vary more on the possession style base of football. Like I said, I want to, for me, the most important thing is having the ball and using the ball more than your opponent. So the more you have the ball, obviously, the less likely is you will be conceded on. But I want to see a belief and a drive to want to attack and want to score. So I'd say proactivity is the main thing I look for, even if it's not fully, I'm not fully able to develop possession-based football with kids at a younger age until I get to, more advanced stage like teenagers, adults.
And what do you think is one of the most important things about coaching kids, things that, people tend to overlook?
I say mainly communication is the most important for me, in terms of them understanding what you want. So it's very important to use simple jargon and also having them focus on fun. I want them to enjoy what they do because, if they're enjoying, they'll be more likely to continue to work on their craft and then to be more likely to do what you want in games.
100%. I can definitely say that working with kids up here, I've seen that communication is very important, and retaining attention. There's so many similarities between coaching in wherever you coach in the world. Yeah, when it comes to kids. So, what are some of the biggest differences? Obviously, you have done some coaching in Barbados. What are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed?
I would say probably like an openness to listen.
Yeah.
I'd say I find in the Caribbean there's a little bit of stubbornness, and I guess a little bit of arrogance in terms of their belief in their own abilities, and I guess they don't think they can improve more than what they already achieved. Um, which is where then you have to step in and show them, the differences in level.
Yeah,
Uh, I would say
really glad
mainly
you touched on this.
attitude, and
Yeah,
I say stubbornness. I also find I haven't had too many difficult children here so far, but uh, like I find to them here it's more like a game. So
yeah,
like you focus more on fun rather than you could be more intensive in the Caribbean. You could be a little bit more competitive. You could make things a little more intense. I think those are the main differences for me.
yeah. I gotta
Um,
say, I definitely notice that in the Caribbean. I think that carries straight through from youth right up
yeah,
to senior. That there's a lot of overbelief in one's ability, but I
yeah,
think that comes from lack of exposure. So a lot of the times, if you're playing up here, it's not that hard to run into a team that's miles ahead of you, no matter how good you think you
yeah,
are.
absolutely.
Whereas in Barbados, if you are the best in Barbados, which is not really that hard to be,
Yeah,
if you're the best in Barbados, you will never be, competing against someone better than you
yeah.
unless you, travel the Caribbean or travel the world.
Mhm.
And so I think it's easy to foster that lackadaisical mentality. So I do think a large part of coaching, especially in the Caribbean, is trying to instill, just that you were saying, that winning and competitive spirit, where you have to win, you have to do it, and just doing it for doing its sake. Keep intensity high for intensity's sake. All right, so I want to touch on player development stages, because I know you've coached young right up. I've also coached from the youngest right up to the top.
Yeah.
So what what do you find in terms of, well, the U.S. soccer? Because you can speak on that. I can compare and contrast U.S. soccer and Concacaf as well. But what do you think of the development stages that are expressed and taught about in U.S. soccer?
Well, they mainly focus more on having fun, which is, I mean, it is good to an extent, but
Mm,
I think that's more just making it more fun. Is just more about retention of players through the ages.
mhm,
Um, in terms of my biggest, I say criticism,
mhm.
uh, it would be just the infrequency of sessions. So
Yeah.
like 2 sessions a week is not enough for me in order to like have them retain ideas unless they continue to work on it at home.
Mhm.
So I try to have a good rapport with parents wherein I could give them like some uh, I guess personal exercises and details I would want them to work on.
Mhm.
Um,
And this is, to caveat, is rec soccer.
yeah,
Yeah.
mainly just sort of like after school programs,
Yeah.
like on the weekends. There are some players with a different level of belief and drive towards the game. So like I would find they would be, even in their own age groups, they would be very clear standouts
Mhm.
among their peers. I find like as I work with older kids, like
Mhm.
let's say from like kindergarten, so like 3, 4, 5. I'm not 100% sure on the age.
Mhm.
So if I transition to like a 7 or 8 year old, I could be a little bit. I could change my language one, and then I
Yeah.
could ask more of them in practices. So
Yeah.
and they would be able to retain the information a little bit better.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
do.
definitely think.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No, you're good. You
Okay.
could go ahead.
I definitely see that. When you reach the team level, sometimes they go, again, because football or soccer here
Yeah.
is much more of a business
Mhm.
based thing.
Yeah.
You do get to a point where parents are paying so much money for their kids, to
Yeah.
play, and then they introduce this idea of competition so that they can, play more games, but then get more money from the parents. So you can have travel teams that are 6 and 7 year olds that travel 500 miles to play a 30-minute game.
Yeah.
And they're paying for travel, hotels, accommodation, transport, all this, uniforms, and it kind of drains the love from the sport, and it makes it almost robotic, very much a cash cow.
Yeah.
But the programs you're talking about, those rec programs that are there simply for the love of it, because
Yeah.
that's the only reason you're
Yeah.
you're at this level now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think that a lot of them are so basic, and this is probably the first generation or the first two generations in U.S. soccer history where most of the coaches have actually played.
Yeah.
So for a large part, none of the parents, coaches, no one has actually had experience playing football. So it's now, now that that's, getting a chance to change. Where do you see that going?
I mean, I think that it is good having previous players players who've played beginning to coach, because the generations you're talking about previously, there'd be like parents who want to just help their kid have fun, and then they don't really understand like more technical aspects of the game, or they don't analyze the game or consume the sport enough to really understand the levels you could potentially take youth to. So I think there will be an improvement technically, in terms of like just overall ability, and then the level should eventually rise to a high enough level where you can maybe have MLS as an appeal, like
Yeah.
as a starting point for your career, as opposed to like, let's say, like a Austrian league or like Bundesliga, France, somewhere like that. That's where I think U.S. soccer is going to go. I think the World Cup is going to help a lot in the next couple of years once it does happen. I think that will really show the level of exposure to the sport, because it is the most popular sport in the world for a reason.
Yeah.
The beautiful game, right?
Yeah. I think we're starting to see that as well. Yeah, just like what you were saying, I think we're starting to see that. We're seeing more people coming to the MLS. Obviously, the pull of Messi and Suarez
absolutely.
and company has definitely helped grow the investment there. But I think you're also seeing that a lot more younger players are seeing the MLS as, okay, this is actually something that I can create a career in, because you're seeing more transfers now from the MLS to foreign clubs. You see. I think Diego Suarez is his name. That was just at Inter Miami. He was just signed by, I think, Brighton. So you're seeing a lot more players leave the MLS to go and play in these top leagues, and they're starting to hold their own. Yeah. So I think that's definitely a good thing. I think it's definitely something that you'll see, that trajectory kind of change. What do you think of the play practice play model?
I think it's.
Can you explain it to us first?
Okay, so play practice play is pretty much you try to keep things as game realistic as possible. So like everything you work on, there will be some aspect that it will occur in a game. So like a lot of the times your sessions are usually broken down into 3 stages. So like most of the time for me, let's say I do in a 45-minute session, I would do probably like 20 minutes of free play, and I don't comment, I don't coach during this point. I just look and I take notes on like what I want to work on and what areas I can see improvement in the team. So then my next session, usually based on the week before, would be designed to work on, things I want to improve. And then
you would work on it and then give them the time at the end to play again.
And then we work on the things we want to work on, like in terms of like, let's say we want to work on passing or ball retention. So during the first 20 minutes or so, we would see them play and see how well they keep the ball, how well they're able to move the ball as a team. And then if there's things to be worked on, we would do that during the second part. And then that 20 minutes or 15 minutes with breaks would be focused mainly on like working specifically on that one area, let's say on ball retention. And then the last model would be more game, like I would transfer into a game setting, and then I want to see ideally what we just worked on in the previous 20 minutes. I think is okay. I think mainly for youth, I think that's probably the best way to go about it, because you give them more time to play. So like,
but youth like at a rec level.
Ideally, you just at one 20-minute session would be mainly focusing on tactical drills, physical drills, or even the communication drills, be talking to each other in team positioning. And then, so as long as they get to play more than anything else, I think that's really what the idea is. So, and then of course, keeping it game realistic.
Makes sense.
Let's
see what else is next. Now, something else that was touched on during the D license would have been data, performance analysis, video analysis, that sort of stuff. How would you go about video analysis? I mean, I know you have a rec team, so I know there's no video like that. But how are you interested in in incorporating. I know you get the Red Bulls job,
Yeah.
you're gonna have,
Yeah,
you know, you're gonna have
more opportunities
Yeah,
to
more
work
opportunity to
in
get
terms of
that.
video and higher
Yeah.
level of data. Ideally, if I could, I would record most of my sessions.
Yeah,
But I know, a lot of parents are not open to that, and then you would also have to get permission from either like your boss or even to ask where we play at the parks or wherever we play at. We
Yeah.
have to get mainly permission to record sessions. So what I try to do is I usually work with another coach during the weekends mainly. So like I try to have either one of them record statistics, or I would make a note with my notebook,
Yeah.
like of what I see in terms of goals scored, like passes completed. But I mean, I will eventually obviously miss certain amounts of information if I'm unable to record. And then also I try to get feedback from, let's say, people in the game I respect and I have like a rapport with, and see where I can improve too. Because like coaching is more about, and we as in me as a coach and the players, it's a cumulative goal to improve at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
So I do think data is very, very important, and I try to be as data driven as possible. But in terms of video analysis, like I said, if I had the ability to, I would record all my sessions, and then I would just review them, and then I would send them to others to just get feedback and then see what they think, where I can improve, or even show them drills and get feedback with the drills. So
For sure, because I mean, football is a very data-driven sport nowadays, and I think it's always great to look back at, self-review, whatever, and I think that's what makes coaching a team such a full-time, ideally full-time position, because you can always do review on yourself, review on how the team performed in the practice session, reviews on how the team performed in the game. I think that's something that I'm trying to do now, coming out with my season in March, is get some game analysis, so I can look back at the end of the game and say, okay, here is why we're working on this in training, here is why, whatever, and be able to not just have them have to trust me, but I can actually show them and be like, okay, we created 4 attacks on the right hand side, but none resulted in a cross. So today we're going to work on opening up a space to create a cross and then support the cross in the middle, depending on what it is. So I think that's also very important. And then as a sports scientist, that is,
there's nothing better really.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing I would like to really implement is like I would like to record from different angles. So I don't know how popular this is, but like I like the idea of a drone above the field where we work. So like you're then able to explain to players better what positional play you want to see. Like I know we've discussed in private about like even on tactical pad, like I love to use the grids on the pitch, so where you could keep them in specific zones. And then I also think, but like them trusting us and then seeing what we work on they then begin to trust each other more. So like mainly, if I can, like I would try to record data every session, and then like I said, I want to have video from the side and on top. Because like you can then it's like you can literally have a in IRL tactical pad because of just the angle of the video. And then you can explain different positions, and then it's easier to show it on the video rather than on a tactical board, so they get actual first person experience as opposed to this third person by you completely discussing it to them.
Completely agree. That's definitely something I think in Barbados you'd have to get to the national team before you really get that kind of level, but that's something that I really want to implement, not only like you said, the video, but also the drones, because drones are, I think, fairly easy to get if you can just get a permit to use it on this night for this purpose or whatever. I definitely think that will help take any team honestly to another level. But on that point, I want to look at coaching in a limited environment, because that is something more akin to me than it is to you, because I know you have the world of soccer balls up here, and I've done some coaching up here as well, quite a bit actually, and I gotta say the amount of equipment and the ease at which you can access equipment here is amazing. What do you think would be the best way to scale back training sessions, in your opinion, from having, say you go to a club, overseas, and have to create more with less.
Okay.
How do you see is a bit of doing
Great
scale
question.
back seconds?
Great question. Let me think of how to answer this. I mean, in terms of like space on the pitch, I could tell you that even despite the size of a football field,
Yeah,
I mean, games will be played in specific areas. So, like, if you can work and then rotate out within a smaller area, that's fine. And then in the event you don't have like goals, um, you could also do different exercises where you could create points that way. So you can still create a game-like setting despite not having everything you would need um, in order to really like to implement the play practice play model as it would be
Yeah.
here. So like if there's no goals, you can say, let's say, okay, so 5 passes would be a goal.
Yeah.
Or you can have cones and say like, okay, so let's say we want 3 passes and then a run into the channel, and then you would get points like that if the defenders win the ball. Can they retain the ball? What can they do with the ball? Or like if they win the ball back, they then become the attacking team. So like, I think
Simple thing
maybe
like that.
some examples along those lines. There's some things you can do.
Yeah. I know. I definitely saw that space was actually something that was surprisingly limited up
Yeah.
here, because usually whenever you're coaching a team, you actually have to share the field
Yeah.
with several other teams. So you do have to plan for a certain
Yeah.
portion of the field, even if you do have a million footballs. So I think that's definitely a great idea. Just planning for using smaller areas. And I know, for example, I have the experience where I have fewer footballs, fewer small goals,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it is definitely a case of trying to use as few goals as possible to make
Yeah.
your situation work.
I also think another good thing that can come out of that is like as you rotate players, and then as you're watching and spectating, you can speak to the players like, "Hey, what did you understand by doing this?"
Mm.
And then like I try to ask open-ended questions because I want them to be problem solvers themselves.
Yes.
I don't want to give them answers at all.
Yeah.
I want them to come to the conclusion themselves, because you can only coach to a point, and then it's up to them to go on the field, and then it's their responsibility to solve it with each other as the game is played. So I think it does create a little bit more room for conversation, and then you could also just remind them. Let's say like they were struggling with a certain area, like, hey, I noticed this. Maybe you could try this instead.
Yeah.
And then you could guide them in the right direction, and then
Yeah.
see
Directly.
without directly answering questions. Yeah.
Yeah. I think demonstration it also helps a lot.
Yeah.
Because I know for certain techniques, and usually it's for technical things, you can demonstrate the correct way to half turn, or the correct way to
Yeah.
play a driven pass. Those smaller things, but a lot of that is also stuff that kids have to learn and work on their own.
Yeah.
Because it's not always the club that's going to have the time to let you replay that pass 10 times in order to get the technique right. So where do you think that outside practice comes in?
Honestly, I don't think you really need too much. I know a good thing in terms of improving in technical ability is like literally if you have a wall like outside your house, you can just take a ball and whack it against a wall, and then you're based on like the direction the ball comes to you. You learn so many different things. So like you understand how to receive the ball in pretty much almost every scenario. Helps with first touch, helps with first time passing.
Yeah.
Helps with movement, anticipation where a ball's going to be. So like there's a lot of game realistic aspects you can have even just practicing at home by yourself against a wall.
Right. So still, it's very important that
You
do
definitely
train
have to work.
outside of.
You 100% have to work, because like I said, especially at younger ages, it's like 1 to 2 sessions a week is not enough,
Yeah.
and like a lot of it will be forgotten by the time the next week comes, and then you will have to spend a lot of your session reworking on things that you would have hoped
Yeah.
you have already covered
Yeah.
as the season goes on.
100%.
Another thing too is like I try to drill in is to have parents play with them and to create a sense of like a team outside of the pitch.
Yeah.
But I do understand people have jobs and other responsibilities
And
outside, and work. But I think if you do have a kid or a child or young adult, whatever age it is, you should be invested in the things they like, and then you should try to learn as they learn.
Yeah.
And then that way you'll be able to, I could communicate with you probably on a higher level than I would with them, and then they would understand like how to help them improve off the field as well.
Yeah. And then, I mean, speaking of parents, I know that dealing with parents can be quite a pain. up here. People are a lot more involved. That's one of the biggest differences I saw between the Caribbean and America is that parents have a lot more time to be invested in their kids up here.
Yeah.
So football on the weekend, usually in the Caribbean, parents drop off the kids and then they're
Yeah.
going to work, or they're going to do
Yeah.
something. Whereas in the States, the parents are there on the sidelines all the time.
Yeah.
So I know parents do get on why isn't my kid playing more?
Yeah.
My kid needs to be in this position, my kids needs to do this, or they're shouting actively while you are coaching, or talking actively, or trying to deal with your kid actively while you're coaching. So wow, what are some of the ways you have what are some of the ways you've managed to keep parents in parent space?
Well, I try to make sure there's some kind of distance between them and the field. So, like, I would ask them to, like, give us a little bit of room. And then, I have had to deal with experiences where parents have come onto the pitch, and I let them know specifically and outright, it's like, hey, this is not appropriate.
Yeah.
While here, I am in charge, and then, you need to respect me, and you're paid and put your trust into me to coach the session. I would like you to, you can be a parent outside of this.
Yeah, like the coach's coach.
Yeah, let the coaches coach, and then you let me handle the disciplinary. I mean, I don't really discipline kids specifically very young. I try to keep things as friendly as possible. Like, let's say there's a bus stop on the field. I would, have them apologize to each other, and then, I would reiterate, this is not what we want. And then if it happens again, I would take them out the game.
Yeah.
In terms of shouting, really, I try to have I try to speak to them during the water break or after sessions, and be like, hey, well, like, if this is good with you, you can work on this at home.
Yeah.
And then, while here, you just allow him to play and figure it out. You can't, like, like, they try to be coaches off the field with you. And then, too many cooks in the kitchen, it's not going to end well.
So one of the things that I actually implemented was I would make sure you meet with the parents in advance. You let them know outright, we're focusing on development over results for this period. Yes, we want to instill a winning mentality, but right now we want the kids to develop and get to a point where they're comfortable. And I would let them know, so they temper their expectations.
Yeah.
And then let them know again, we're going to make sure everyone gets minutes. Especially at the younger age groups, everyone has to play. And then once you get there, then I would tell the parents what I want them to say. So I'd be like, okay, so this game we want to focus on our attack. So here are 4 or 5 things. If you want to shout one of these things.
Okay.
When you see it, shout one of those things. So it helps the parents visualize what we are working on, but also it gets them to have more of a unified voice, because you're never going to be able to stop parents for shouting for their kids. But if you can stop them from making their kids focus on the wrong things, I think that was something that I have implemented, and for me it's helped a lot.
I don't think I've had honestly the experience to speak to parents on that level, but I do think that is fantastic idea. And if I do in the future have to interact with parents on that level, I think I will be taking that from your arsenal and using that myself.
Coaches are all thieves. That's Pep said it not first, because again he stole that from someone else. But the whole point of a coach is just seeing something that works for someone else, and you try it, you tweak it, you put your own idea, and you get it to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to look at a little bit of looking at talent. How do you identify where a kid is strong, where they need to improve, and what's your thing for looking at a kid and saying, I think I can help that kid?
Okay. Well, there are a few different things I look at. I think some probably a little bit more important than others. One would be technical ability.
Yeah.
You can see pretty much like how they receive the ball, use the ball, and then where they are on the pitch, and if they understand space. I think understanding space is very, very important at a younger level, and I think if you can implement that from an early age, they would go probably a lot further than normal.
Yeah.
I think drive and just being able to try despite making mistakes is another thing that I look for. Because like I said, for me, if I see that to me is a player, even though they may be at a lower technical level, I know that they are going to continuously work and have the ability to improve because they're open to improving.
Yeah.
Uh,
So attitude is definitely what's
Yeah.
most important.
I think that is very high up on my
Yeah.
list.
100%. 100%.
Um,
And I think that's also something that works in when you're developing older players as well.
yeah.
So obviously at a young age, technical ability is not really that
That
important.
clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something that will develop as you get
Yeah.
older, as you get taller, as you get bigger, as you get
Mhm.
faster. And then, once you hit puberty and your body changes again, then
absolutely. Yeah.
you learn that all over again. But definitely with the older kids, you're looking for the attitude that's
Yeah,
going to be
ability
I
to work
wanna
with
get
others
better.
is another one
Yeah.
I look for. It's like I've seen players, like they know they're better, and then they just play the game by themselves.
Yeah.
So then I'm forced to really be like, hey, so now as you play, I have to reduce your amount of touches because like I want everyone to feel involved.
Yeah.
So it's like there is a little bit of a struggle finding that balance, especially at a younger age, because like kids will want to showcase, they want to have the ball at all times. I also find that's where where we have to stop the game a lot because everyone is crowding around each other to get to the ball. So like attitude, being able to listen, and then for me, like I said, like at least showing a small grasp of understanding space.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with that even at older ages because they're just ball hungry.
Yeah.
So they're going to naturally drift to where the ball is rather than trusting a teammate to be like, hey, I know based on what we worked on, this ball will come to me eventually.
Yeah.
So to stay where I am or find open space. So I find like mainly space is what I have to reiterate at a younger level. So like if I could see that, and then like I said, attitude, ability to want to improve.
Yeah.
That's what I look for mainly, because then you could take that player. That player is malleable, and you can mold them into something greater.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And then that then leads in now to our pathways. So what are our pathways? We have a player who's doing well, he's going to the next level. How do we get, in your opinion, what's a good way to get that kid to the level that they need to be? Because I know there are a million videos about how to get scouted and how to go to D1 and how to do whatever. But what is something from a coach's perspective? We have a player who is has the ability to get the next level. What do we do?
Well, for me, I tend to just focus on what that player's weak at. So if you see a lot of strengths in that player, one, I would let my superiors know.
Yeah.
One, because I'd be like, hey, I think this kid should be playing at a higher level, or I think this kid is very strong in whatever aspects he's good at. But like, I would then probably speak to him after sessions and be like, hey, I would like to maybe work on you one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then because I think you have the talent to go very far in the sport, and then I want to point out to them what I think they can improve on mainly, because then even in modern football now, like you're asked to play in multiple different areas, so like you're gonna have different responsibilities wherever you play.
Yeah.
So it's good to be well-rounded, and then have very limited amount of weaknesses in your game. I personally haven't done too much scouting and how to recommend it, but like I also think it'd be important to maybe find a pathway or avenue, or put them in contact with someone who could work with us and the team, where they could have video evidence, and then I would speak to people in the game about how can I help him get to probably a different team or a better team, wherein he can then find a different environment to grow, and then he's not plateaued by continuously playing at the same level.
Yeah.
So there would always be continuous improvement in his game.
And that's really tough, especially in Barbados, because I mean, as much as you send out video, it takes something very special in order to and of course, as good as you can be, it's always the luck that you need. You always need that luck to either be somewhere playing, someone sees you, to impress with the national team, to get some sort of video, or to get an agent that's going to tout you to other players. And I think that opportunity is coming up a lot more in the female game now.
Okay.
So I definitely believe that there's a lot of opportunities for especially women in the region to get out. Whereas there are a lot of women up here that play football, even even recreationally at a very high level, semi-pro, even girls. There's so many girls teams. So why do you think that women's football, girls football, is so much more popular here than it is in in the Caribbean?
Well, I think probably the success of the U.S. soccer's women's team
Yeah.
has done a lot to help with that. I feel like they've had probably like a lot of role models in terms of like Rapino, Hope Solo. You know,
Callie
those
Lloyd,
are yeah,
Alice Morgan, yeah.
those are players who
Even Trinity Rodman from this
yeah, yeah, yeah.
generation.
Those would be players they could probably aspire to, and I also think well, for years now there's really been like a boom in terms of like empowering women. So like
Yeah.
I think that would create a platform where they would have more opportunities to grow in the sport. I do think in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
even though I haven't been there for a little bit, the level of talent is very high.
Yeah.
But it's again like you got to see the willingness to want to improve and to be receptive to information. And it's like, and not all criticism is bad. I think that's probably a big thing. Is like so like if we do point out things we think we can improve, there tends to be like a defensive reaction or pushback.
Yeah.
Wherein we just wanted them. Well, we want better for them, so they have to
Yeah.
want better for themselves too. So I think hopefully, well, within the next couple of years, hopefully we could see the Barbados team
Yeah.
reach these heights because the talent is there.
Yeah,
And,
the talent is definitely there. I think is one other thing I've noticed here is societally, culturally.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more emphasis on fitness in certain aspects. So I find athleticism being such a big thing in all the other sports here. I think generally the people here are fairly athletic, and I think that's something that's lacking in Barbados. But I think if we can incorporate more athleticism into our culture, into our identity, I think that's something that could catch us up.
I also, sorry, just
No,
to piggyback on that idea, I think it would also be good. I mean, I do know we play as different nations in terms of like, let's say, Reggae Boys versus the Tridents.
Yeah.
I think it would be good if if at some point it could be annual camps wherein the entire Caribbean would work together and we could have collective facilities and improved facilities
Yeah.
across the Caribbean, wherein that would then create more of an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because there's once you have access to better resources, you can then see and
100%.
implement more growth that way too.
100%.
So hopefully, fingers
Yeah.
crossed, that's where it can eventually go.
Can you imagine if there's like an ID camp in like up here where you just have if you have Jamaican citizenship, Trini citizenship, Barbadian citizenship, you just come to this one central location in New York. You spend 3 days, 4 days, and you're just training, and then at the end you then can contact the BFA and say, okay, look, here's 6 high level Bajan women or men, Trinidad, Trinidad and Jamaica have more professional players, but you can go to like a St. Kitts, a St. Vincent, be like, look, here's 7, here's 8, high level players that can potentially add to your national team that are just playing here semi-pro or just
I think that would be great, honestly.
Yeah.
And that also gives them access to different voices and different types of coaching that they probably wouldn't have in the Caribbean because let's say in a men's game, a lot of players come after work when they can, and then, it's like it's not consistent. So like you're not going to see results as you want because it's not a daily thing you're working on. And then, like I said, you get to fight back sometimes in terms of criticism and stuff like that. But that would be fantastic if they could have that opportunity.
100%.
Even maybe like quarterly, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
I think that would do wonders for the game. Even within a year, you would see a transformation in the sport if that, if eventually it does get to that point.
Yeah. One in New York, maybe one in London. I think that'd be amazing. And finally, off the
yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about some of the tactical innovations and ideas and some unpopular tactical opinions that you would have noticed that are burning a hole in your chest. Things that people don't notice, but you consuming as much football content as you have.
Yeah.
Something that you would have noticed.
Well, I could give you one example from the team I support. I am a Chelsea fan, and then I'd say from like preseason, I was screaming for Caicedo to be used as a right back and have him invert into midfield. Because in specific chats I have or talks is like people they don't understand how they could fit Lavia, Enzo Fernandez, and Caicedo in the same team.
Yeah.
And the idea to them was that one of them has to be dropped, and I don't think that was necessary because we've seen. I mean, let me say this in a way where I don't be offensive, really, but it's like I don't think like a starting formation matters that much because the idea of football is to be fluid.
I think there's no offense. No one should take
Yeah,
offense.
so, like,
You're absolutely right. Formation is just
because
For
at any
broadcasters.
given point, you just want to see advantages on specific areas of the pitch, and like we discussed earlier,
Yeah.
football is played in specific areas at given points. And every part of the pitch will not be used at every given part of the game. So
Yeah.
it's like, by inverting him from right back, then you were able to play all three, and then you were able to free up responsibility from players like Palmer, Enzo, and then look at him now. He's like the last 7 games
flying.
he's flying, probably like 10 goals and assists.
Yeah.
In terms of other things too, I think what I've noticed is like increase in like the man-to-man press returning.
Yeah.
There was a lot of mid blocks. That was, let's say, like last 2 to 3 years, especially like Real Madrid winning in Champions League for God knows how many years. Like if you look at their pressing structure, because like playing players like Kroos, Modric, Kroos before he retired, Modric,
Yeah.
like they don't have the legs anymore.
Correct.
So like
Benzema.
even. So like they rely heavily on individual quality to progress the ball. But once you can block 2 passing lanes and then have 2 banks of 4, they're able to really win the ball back and reduce the amount of space the opponent has to play.
Yeah.
And then their talent is undeniable. So the ball will get to the goal at some given point. What other things do I notice or do I want to see?
Let's look at Man City because I feel like Man City always like Pep's defenses always fall off when he's been there long enough because in my opinion he has his recipe for his soup, and every 6 months he adds another ingredient to his soup, and another ingredient. So now he has a soup that's so full of ingredients that he doesn't know what soup he has, or the players don't know what soup they have. And in my mind, I think he just needs to go back to his base soup. But what are your opinions?
So I think there's a lot of things wrong with City right now. Mainly, let's say, I would just say the size of the squad is the first thing I can notice. Like I've known Pep throughout his career. He says he likes to work with like 17 to like 18 players.
Very small squad.
Very small squads, and then that mainly is for implementing his ideas. So because he is so reliant on just that little amount of players, he's going to continuously use the players he trusts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be hard for newer players to come in and get the same level of trust he has as like players who played previously. In terms of his ideas, I do think he's evolved he's evolved from the treble winning season.
Yeah.
And then in terms of build up, I think he is weaker now in transition because he's removed that additional player. And I think an over reliance on Rodri is probably the main reason for that because you can trust Rodri not to lose the ball even if he's outnumbered in midfield.
Yeah.
So like the 3-1, like 5-1, 3-1-6 build up, I'm not a fan of. Because I think you're so reliant on them to not lose the ball that your weakness in transition has gone up another level.
Yeah.
And then age of squad, if you look at the way City pressed previously, like they were relentless.
Yeah.
This is why they were able to keep players like opposition teams in their own half for large parts of the game.
Barca in a 6-second rule.
And then they just no longer have the legs to do it. De Bruyne is I think 34.
Yeah.
Bernardo is bordering on 30.
Yeah.
I also think signing Haaland has probably
Changed.
shoehorned a little bit of their attacking identity, wherein you would have goals from all over, from Foden, De Bruyne, Aguero when he was there.
Yeah.
Even Gundogan
Yeah.
prior to him leaving, I think he ended with like 17 goals or something.
Yeah.
And then, if you look at now, it's like there's Haaland with like 19 or 17 or 18, whatever the amount is. And then the next after him is Vardiol. like 6.
Center back,
Yeah, and then,
left back.
yeah. So like that drop off is
I do.
has been tremendous. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised at it myself, but
But definitely his idea of if you're not happy with your playing time, leave. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
also hurt
Yeah.
him because he's lost so many really
Quality
good
players,
players. Lost Sane when he was after the injury, of course, but he
Yeah.
was still a very good player. Lost Cancelo to that. I think he's lost Mahrez to that. Yeah, there's a lot of players that he let go. A little bit
yeah,
early. And finally, last one, I want to touch on Arsenal and United because I know you're very upset with how Arteta has completely
yeah.
given up on his philosophy.
Yeah. Well, for me as a coach, it's like it hurts me to see someone give up on their ethos, especially considering the level of quality that they've shown in the last 2 years. I mean, Arsenal probably were lacking a little bit of steel to get over the line pause in terms of just like just defensive solidity and
Yeah.
a little bit of the dark arts, let's say. I think now, despite being so strong at set pieces, they could have taken that and added it to what they already had. But if you look at their style of play now, they let's say like their midfielders are playing way further back.
Yeah.
They're comfortable letting the opponent have the ball because they trust their defenders, and now David Raya to keep a clean sheet, and then they are, for me, too reliant on set pieces.
Yeah.
Like they play for corners, and that is pretty much a 180 from what we've seen last year when they were like a point short of winning the league.
Yeah.
And they were completely dismantling teams.
Yeah. So rather than just adding set pieces to a winning formula,
already winning and successful formula, he
Yeah.
was just completely reverted
changed
on it. And then for me, as a coach, that is like
cardinal sin.
cardinal sin, and it's like even when times are tough and then you don't get over the line, you must believe in the work that you do,
Yeah.
and you must believe in your ethos and how you want to play your sport, and then
Yeah.
like it is on you to implement that belief into them as well. So it's like I think maybe he doesn't trust himself to get over the line a little bit, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely not pleased with what I see, and then it has become almost unwatchable for me. I'm just a little bit
All right.
disappointed in that.
Well, apologies again for the sound of speakers right there, but thank you guys very much for sticking with us to the end. Daniel, thank you very much for giving up your time, man.
Appreciate it. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, guys, we're becoming elite together.